That day, he went about his usual routine and unexpectedly came across a quiet, cozy little corner where he saw a heartwarming scene that made him slow down and take it in. A gentle mother dog was quietly staying close to her puppies. Every now and then, she lowered her head to groom their fur. Sometimes she would lean in to sniff one, then check on another, like a patient mother caring for her most precious little family. The round little puppies were huddled tightly together, their tiny bodies all bundled up in the cute little pile. Some of them lay there lazily without moving, while others gently nuzzled against their mother's belly, and some, still with their eyes closed, slowly wiggled back and forth. Sunlight fell softly over this peaceful little space, and even the air itself seemed especially gentle. A simple, warm moment like this makes it even easier to feel the natural and delicate bond between pets. Whenever the mother dog stepped out for a little while, the puppies would quietly stay in their warm and peaceful little space. They were still so young, and their clumsy little movements made you want to keep watching. Their tiny bodies stayed nestled close together. One moment, they would slowly roll over. The next, they would gently twitch their paws. Their soft, babyish little look made them even more adorable. As the night gradually grew deeper and everything around them became quiet, the mother dog would always return to her puppies quickly, bringing her little treasures back into her sight again. She could hardly bear to be away from them for even a moment. The young man would also come back from time to time to check on them, and every time he saw this scene, he couldn't help but be deeply drawn in by the warmth of it. The dogs lived at their own gentle pace, and the young man went on with his own daily life. Yet this quiet rhythm, without disturbing one another, somehow made their unspoken bond feel even warmer. Time passed little by little, slowly and quietly. And though nothing dramatic happened, life gradually became warmer and warmer. Those puppies who once could only huddle together and nap quietly were also growing up bit by bit in this kind of companionship. The puppies looked more lively with each passing day. Then those once slow little babies gradually began to show their own lovable personalities. The young man, just as before, still came by to see them almost every day. And just like that, after spending more and more time together, this lovely dog family slowly became part of his life. Later on, the dogs moved into his home. The house, which had once been so quiet, suddenly felt full of warmth and everyday life because of these little ones. There were floppy little figures all across the floor, hopeful eyes waiting by the door, and it felt as if every corner of the house had been gently filled with their adorable presence. It's honestly hard not to envy a scene like this. After all, who could resist a fluffy, lively, and heartwarming little family like this? The dogs didn't just make ordinary days feel more alive. They also filled simple moments with a kind of happiness worth remembering. There was no dramatic story here, and yet, because of this real and easy kind of companionship, the whole scene felt especially healing. Watching this little family live together felt just like a pet-filled daily life that made you relax more and envy it more the longer you watched. And it really made you feel that sometimes the most touching things are exactly these simple, lively, and warm moments of companionship. After some time had passed, the puppies had clearly grown quite a bit. Their eyes had grown bright and shiny, as if they were filled with curiosity about the world around them. Their once wobbly movements had gradually become more agile too. Now they were happily playing around in the yard, their tiny little bodies running back and forth in the sunlight. Sometimes they chased each other around in play, and other times they would stop, tilt their heads, and look around curiously. Their innocent, lively energy made them more lovable the longer you watched. A little while later, their mother came back from her walk. Just like before, she seemed naturally curious about the world outside. She always liked going out on her own to check out whatever was happening around her. Like she had a small adventurous spirit she never really lost. But no matter how much she liked going out and looking around, when it came to her still young puppies, she always seemed to know exactly where to draw the line. She never took the puppies out to wander around with her. It was almost as if she was out there checking the world for this little family first. And every time she appeared, the whole feeling in the yard changed immediately. What made it even more enviable was that this meeting and companionship felt like a rare kind of fate, all on its own. Not everyone is lucky enough to have a gentle mother dog like this appear in their life. And not everyone gets to have a group of lively, adorable puppies like these, bringing laughter, warmth, and life into each day, little by little. Their arrival gave this young man's ordinary life so many more moments to look forward to, and added a little extra fluffy happiness to every single day. The mother dog's calmness, the puppy's innocence, and the natural closeness this little family shared made every moment impossible not to admire. Scenes like this really were so healing and so easy to envy. Maybe what truly touches people most is exactly this kind of just right encounter, a bond that slowly grows closer, slowly becomes familiar, and eventually turns into an important part of each other's lives. To meet a group of dogs this lovable and watch them make ordinary days softer and livelier, little by little, really feels like a special gift from life. As late night settled in, both the yard and the house gradually grew quiet, and all the lively little sounds from the daytime slowly softened into the quiet of the night. At that moment, the mother dog seemed to naturally slip into a different role. She was always used to staying by the door or somewhere near the yard. Just knowing she was there keeping watch somehow made the whole night feel more secure. It was as if the cat had fully taken these little ones in as its own to watch over. The cat carefully curled up right beside the puppies, letting them lean against it and snuggle close. Some of the puppies even sleepily burrowed into the cat's arms. That Fluffy against Fluffy, warm little cuddle pile was so cute it could melt your heart. The puppies gently shifted around in their sleep. What felt most tender of all was the sense of companionship between them. Outside the door, the mother dog faithfully watched over the night. Inside, the gentle cat held the puppies close as they quietly drifted to sleep. One quietly guarding outside, the other softly keeping them company inside. Even though the scene was calm, it carried a surprisingly moving kind of power. It felt as though every member of this little home was taking part in that sense of togetherness in their own way. The mother dog protected the home with care and responsibility. The cats stayed with the puppies with gentleness and patience. And the puppies, with their soft, baby sweet little selves, made the whole night feel even softer and cuter. Warm moments like this always make people want to revisit them again and again.
哎呦，小猫草！
Early this morning, the man was already busy preparing breakfast for these little ones. You could tell that every day in this home almost began with taking care of these adorable little fur babies. The sky had only just started to brighten, and the yard still carried that quiet feeling unique to early morning. But he was already thinking about these fluffy little family members. Before long, the smell of breakfast seemed to wake up the whole atmosphere of the yard. The extra food he prepared for them looked especially thoughtful. No wonder each of these little pups looked so round and chubby, with that unmistakable look of being lovingly cared for. The puppies waddled as they walked, and when they gathered together, they looked like little fluffy cotton balls. No matter how you looked at them, they were impossible not to love. The yard had always been filled with a warm, everyday kind of feeling. And now, with this whole group of puppies around, that feeling had become even softer. What people loved most, really, was this kind of cozy, lived-in daily life with pets. Just a simple breakfast was already enough to let you feel the warmth and liveliness of this little yard. The mother dog's gentle watchfulness, the man's thoughtful care. And the puppies with their carefree, baby soft, energetic little selves all came together. Like a healing little moment, you could never get tired of watching. A scene like his doesn't just feel cute. It also makes you envy what it must feel like to be surrounded by these fluffy little lives. Days like this feel warming exactly the right way.
来，吃蛋蛋。
Today's opening begins with an especially tender scene in the yard. The morning light falls gently across everything, and the whole little yard is wrapped in a calm and gentle atmosphere, while the mother dog is already out there with her puppies. A few fluffy little ones crowd tightly around their mom, nudging and pressing together into one little bundle. The eager, baby-soft look on their faces is enough to make your heart melt. At first glance, each of them keeps trying to squeeze a little closer, their tiny heads gently nuzzling around, their little paws clumsily stepping on the ground, as if they're afraid that being even a second too late might make them miss out on the small little happiness right in front of them. Meanwhile, their mother stays beside them quietly and gently, letting the little ones gather all around her. And when the puppies nurse, they look so adorable you can barely look away. Some of them nurse with total focus, their whole tiny bodies pressed in nice and close. Some of them give a little wiggle as they drink, and their little tails start wagging without them even meaning to. Others already look completely satisfied, but still don't want to leave, as if they just want to hold on to that warm, comforting feeling a little longer. That tiny sense of contentment shows in almost every little thing they do, as if simply staying close to their mother is enough to make the whole world feel safe and good. Watching them nurse and cuddle at the same time makes it feel like the whole yard is quiet, filled with something soft and healing. The mother dog's patience, the puppy's dependence, and the way this little family stays tucked so close together make this opening feel especially warm and moving. When the man brought out breakfast, the mother dog immediately came running over with her puppies. You could tell that through their day-by-day time together. The mother dog had completely accepted this man. Sometimes, the bond between people and dogs is really hard to explain in simple words. At first, it may seem like nothing more than an ordinary meeting. But as time slowly goes by, you begin to realize that some companionship carries a special meaning from the very start. Maybe in the beginning, it was only a brief, unplanned moment, just one extra glance at each other in the middle of everyday life. But later, that meeting slowly turned into one of the softest and warmest parts of life. Especially when a group of puppies, this adorable, enters your life. Ordinary days feel different simply because they're there. They look at you with those bright, dewy eyes. They clumsily and adorably make their way over to you. And before you even realize it, they've already placed that wholehearted trust right in front of you. That feeling is hard to describe and deeply moving because they can't speak. And yet they always find the most direct and sincere way to make their affection and dependence most stably clear. Dogs have a way of finding their place in people's hearts so easily. Probably because there's something especially precious about their loyalties. It isn't something loud or fleeting, but a quiet kind of companionship that is always there. Whether in happy moments or in the plainest everyday routines, dogs always find their own way of staying by a person's side. They remember familiar scents. They remember the figure that makes them feel safe. And even in the most ordinary moments imaginable, they quietly place their trust and dependence into that companionship. To someone on the outside, it may look like nothing more than a glance, a small step closer, or a wagging tail, or simply lying quietly nearby without making a sound. But anyone who has truly lived with dogs knows that it is exactly these tiny moments that reveal their sincerity most clearly. Dogs don't make feelings complicated, but their companionship is often more direct and more unforgettable than words could ever be. And the bond between people and the dogs is built little by little through moments just like these. At first, it may be nothing more than meeting and staying near each other, just the familiarity that grows day after day. But slowly, meeting turns into routine, and routine turns into someone you can't imagine life without. What makes it even more precious is that dogs bring more than just cuteness and lively energy. They also bring a truly pure emotional connection. They don't get caught up in too many complicated things. Once they've chosen you, they stay with you in the simplest, most direct way. No one really knows how much time quietly slipped by. The dogs were no longer as babyish and wobbly as they had been at the beginning. They had clearly grown a lot more. They carried more energy now, and their eyes looked brighter with every passing day. Early every morning, they were already circling around the man, like a group of little ones who could never hide how happy they were. The moment a familiar figure appeared, the whole yard instantly came to life. Some of them rushed right to the front without a second thought, cycling around his feet again and again, while others liked to quietly follow along with their little heads held high. Just imagining what it feels like to be surrounded by a bunch of fluffy little pups already feels incredibly healing, let alone actually being right there in the middle of it. And what was even more surprising, and even more difficult, was that at some point, without anyone really noticing when, a few more newborn puppies had appeared in the yard. They were tiny little bundles, all soft and squished together, looking almost exactly like the first 3 puppies did when they first arrived here. Round little bodies, baby soft movements, just a gentle wiggle here, a slow little crow there, and they were already enough to draw every bit of your attention. Their arrival felt like it had added something extra to an already warm little yard. The yard had already been full of life to begin with. But now, with even more puppies joining in, that fluffy, cozy feeling, with little surprises tucked into every corner, became even more obvious. No matter where you looked, the yard was almost everywhere filled with soft little bodies. Some lounged quietly in the corner, lost in their own little world. Some stayed pressed close together, nuzzling and cuddling, and others clumsily toddled along on their short little legs. The whole scene felt wrapped in such a light, comforting, and healing atmosphere. The more puppies there were, the livelier everyday life in the yard became. What used to be just a few little ones playing together now felt more like a tiny world buzzing with warmth and life. One side would just start to settle down, and then somewhere else, a new flurry of tiny adorable sounds would begin. A few puppies might still be huddled together in the sun here, while a few more had already gathered somewhere else and turned it into a playful little chaos. Sometimes they loved piling together all at once, like little moving pom-poms of fluff, so much so that you could barely tell one from another at first. And other times, they would scatter off on their own to find their own tiny bits of fun in different corners of the yard. It may have looked a little messy, but it was exactly that slightly chaotic kind of liveliness that made the whole yard feel especially real, and especially full of life. Every single puppy had its own little way of making this place feel more alive, and harder to look away from. What people loved most was really that feeling of the more, the cuter. When there were only a few puppies, the yard felt quietly warm and soft. But once more, puppies joined in. That warmth took on a lively energy that made you smile without even trying. When they all gathered together, It felt as if every small, simple joy had been gathered into one place. Days like these may not seem dramatic at all, and yet they're exactly the kind that make you feel the most healed. Because what these puppies bring is never just surface-level cuteness, but a kind of warmth that slowly settles into everyday life. Today, the yard welcomed another new member, and the new mother dog officially made her appearance too. She may not be very big, but she has a kind of charm that makes you notice her right away. She looks small and soft, with eyes that carry both a gentle warmth and that bright, affectionate spark dogs have. The moment a mother dog like this appears, the whole atmosphere of the yard somehow becomes even livelier. This place was already easy to envy before, but now As more and more puppies and mother dogs keep appearing in this little yard, it's slowly turning into a tiny world made entirely of warmth and cuteness. Wherever you look, there are fluffy little figures everywhere. Some adorable dogs lying quietly at rest. Some little troublemakers happily circling around people. And some cuddled up close, pressing against one another. Just imagining a scene like that is already enough to make anyone deeply envious, let alone getting to see it every single day. Once there were more and more puppies around, this place started to feel completely different from before. Before, it was warmth with a touch of quiet. Now it was warmth filled with endless liveliness and energy. In the morning, the young man might barely have stepped into the yard, before a few eager little ones were already hurrying over to surround him. And in the quieter moments, they would gather in twos and threes like little fluffy pom-poms, filling every corner with softness. But once the energy picked up, their cuteness came rushing at you all at once. With more puppies around, even the air seemed to carry a new kind of lightness. As if just watching these little ones run around the yard was enough to make you feel completely relaxed and healed. They slowly filled what used to be an ordinary space and made each day feel warmer and warmer. A life like this is honestly hard not to envy. after some more time had passed. Those puppies, who once still had their eyes closed and could only huddle together and slowly wiggle around, had quickly grown quite a bit. They were no longer those sleepy, clueless little babies from before. They had become more agile and had also gained that playful energy that made them more lovable the longer you watched. They were even playing now with the slightly older dogs. With so many puppies around, the feeling in the yard had long since changed. It was no longer just a quiet little yard, but something that had slowly turned into a tiny world overflowing with cuteness. Every day, the moment someone walked into the yard, it wasn't just sunlight and the sound of the breeze greeting them, but also the liveliness and energy brought by a whole group of fluffy little ones. Whenever they played and tumbled around together, the whole space seemed to come alive with them. And when they gathered around the man asking for treats, it felt as if even the air carried a soft kind of warmth bay. Sometimes a few puppies would bunch together, all trying to squeeze to the front. And that was exactly what made the whole yard feel so real. Just watching those fluffy little bodies darting back and forth through the yard was already enough to make you feel relaxed. It's easy to imagine how happy that man must feel, living in an atmosphere like this every single day. Maybe in the beginning, he was simply looking after these little ones the way he normally would. But over time, that companionship had already become one of the softest parts of his life. Waking up and seeing them every day, walking into the yard and being surrounded by them, sitting down with a bunch of puppies running around nearby. A scene like that alone is enough to make time feel slower. The days that used to feel completely ordinary had slowly become warmer and more full of anticipation, simply because these little ones were part of them. And on good days, looking at them only made everything feel even better. What makes these fluffy little puppies so special is exactly the way they can heal people through the simplest things. They don't have to do anything extraordinary. Even something as ordinary as having treats and interacting with people is already enough to make your heart soften. Their tiny paws, their little eyes, their every small movement, even that adorably earnest way they clumsily come trotting over. There's something about fluffy puppies that seems to carry a natural power to make people relax. Just looking at these adorable dogs makes the world feel a little less rushed. And a lot of stress and tiredness of everyday life quietly fades a little without you even realizing it. Their cuteness is never something forced. And the healing they bring is never loud or dramatic. Instead, it slowly seeps into everyday life until it becomes a kind of warmth you never want to leave behind. And maybe that's exactly why the bond between dogs and humans always feels so special. Through that kind of companionship, people gradually begin to see them as an irreplaceable part of life. Dogs remember familiar scents and happily rush over the moment they see someone they know. They show their trust and affection openly, without holding anything back. And because of these sincere little lives, people slowly learn to feel the meaning of companionship in a softer way. Maybe what moves people most about the bond between humans and dogs is never one grand, dramatic moment, but the trust and closeness built up through countless ordinary days. It's the familiar feeling of seeing each other every day, the natural closeness when they come near, and the quiet comfort of simply staying by each other's side. A relationship like that is simple, but incredibly precious. Clean and quiet, yet the kind you never forget. So when you see these slightly older puppies in the yard, eating treats, playing around, and acting spoiled, what really touches your heart is no longer just how cute they are, but the warmth hidden beneath all that liveliness. They make the yard feel alive. They bring more laughter into the man's life. And they give even the most ordinary days a softer kind of color. Scenes like this are lively and moving at the same time, light-hearted, yet deeply healing. Like the kind of everyday pet family life that only becomes more enviable the longer you watch. Being surrounded by a whole group of fluffy little ones like this is probably the simplest and most genuine kind of happiness many people dream of. Time really does pass so quickly. So quickly that when you look back, you suddenly realize those once tiny, wobbly little puppies have already grown so much. They're no longer the little ones who only knew how to sleep huddled together, but have slowly grown into a lively little group with bright, sparkling eyes. At this moment, the man has taken them outside for some time outdoors. And the place in front of them looks like a quiet, comfortable orchard. The air feels fresh and natural, and every now and then, the sound of birds chirping can be heard all around. The whole setting feels especially easygoing and peaceful. Sunlight filters through the leaves and falls across the ground, and across these fluffy little bodies too, making the moment feel as gentle as a healing everyday scene meant just for a pet family. Once they arrived in a place this open and comfortable, the puppies clearly grew even more excited. One moment they circled around the man, and the next, they couldn't help but sniff here and look there, curious about everything around them. What makes it so lovable is how natural that happiness feels. There's nothing staged or overly dramatic about it, and no elaborate setup at all. Just a man bringing a group of puppies outside, listening to the birds and feeling the breeze, while watching them happily play around nearby. A scene this ordinary. And the reason it feels so especially healing is probably because it shows happiness in such a simple way. The sound of the wind in the orchard, the light filtering through the leaves, the non-stop chirping of the birds, and this whole group of puppies gathered around the man. These fluffy little ones don't need to do anything special, just staying close, following along, and leaning on the person they trust is already enough to make the feeling of happiness overflow. That's often how the healing presence of puppies works. Not dramatic, but deeply real. With their most innocent little selves, they slowly bring ease and joy into everyday life. And through the simplest kind of companionship, they let people feel a pure kind of happiness. This lively yet gentle moment in the orchard feels like the kind of everyday pet scene that leaves you in a better mood just from watching it. Time keeps moving forward, little by little, and the puppies keep growing bit by bit. But the softness and healing they bring only grow stronger through that companionship. Watching them grow up so happily and stay by your side makes this kind of time feel unbelievably beautiful and far too precious to want to miss. No one can really say for sure whether some meetings in life happen by chance or were somehow meant to be. Maybe at the very beginning, it was nothing more than an ordinary passing encounter. A tiny life unexpectedly slipping into view on an ordinary day. A pair of clear, innocent eyes. And cautious little steps slowly drawing near. But as time goes by, you start to realize that some connections were never meant to be just a passing sight. They slowly make their way into your life, into your heart, until they become the kind of companionship you can't bear to lose. The man's meeting with these dogs may not have had some dramatic beginning, but because it felt so real and so natural, it became something especially precious. They simply appeared in his life like that. From those tiny little figures in the beginning, to a whole lively yard full of cuteness later on. From being strangers at first, to slowly becoming familiar, and then becoming an irreplaceable part of each other's lives. A lot of the time, what makes fate so moving isn't that it arrives in some earth-shaking way, but that in the most ordinary days, it quietly grows into the deepest kind of attachment. Anyone who has ever lived with dogs probably understands. Not what dogs bring is never just surface-level liveliness and cuteness. What truly lets them enter a person's heart is that quiet companionship that never stops being there. They can't speak, yet they always look at you when you turn around, run toward you when you come near, and stay quietly by your side when everything is still. When you're happy, they get excited right along with you. And when you're tired, they stay with you in the quietest, gentlest way. They'll never ask how your day went, but with a wagging tail, that trusting dependence, and a single look, they hand over all their affection and trust to you. That feeling is something only people who have truly lived with dogs can slowly come to understand. You realize that the things that move you most in life aren't always the big, dramatic moments, but the way they greet you when you open the door each day, the warmth of them naturally coming closer when you sit down, and the quiet satisfaction of looking up to find a group of fluffy little ones playing and snuggling beside you. Maybe many years from now, when you look back on all of this, what stays with you most may not be one particular moment, but all the days these dogs were truly part of your life. The sight of them running through the yard, the way they gathered around people for affection, the way they slept curled up together, and the simple, pure way they left warmth behind in this home. Fate is what brought them together, and the companionship is what gave that meeting its meaning. That's what made the whole yard feel especially real, and especially full of life. Every single puppy had its own way. The man met these dogs, and at first, it may have looked like his life had simply gained a group of adorable little companions. But in truth, his life had gained countless gentle sounds, lively moments, and the kind of happiness nothing could replace. For people who live with dogs, the greatest luck is never just having a dog, but meeting a little life willing to walk beside you at just the right moment in your life. They place their most sincere trust in people, and through that relationship, people learn to treasure companionship more. and to move through life with a softer heart. So as this story comes to an end, what truly stays in your heart may not be what happened, but that gentle warmth that lingers for a very long time. It was fate that brought them together, time that drew them closer, and day after day of being together that made them become the most familiar presence in each other's lives. Those fluffy little puppies, that gentle mother dog, and this little yard filled with laughter and companionship. The most precious gifts in life aren't always the grandest or most dazzling things. Sometimes they are simply a meeting that feels just right, a stretch of time spent depending on one another, and a group of little lives willing to place all their trust in you. And a bond like this will surely remain, quietly tucked away in the heart for many, many days to come. And whenever you think back on it, it will still feel warm and deeply moving.